IT.
Thank you very much indeed, Robin. It's great to be back at another of these excellent crowd events. Delighted to be sharing the stage with Robin Chase. And there's actually a reason I'm more excited about tonight than I have been in a while. Over the past year or so, and I've seen many of your faces at these events. Over the past year or so, I've done a bunch of sessions up here on stage, looking at some really powerful themes and concepts: radical openness, harnessing the power of collaboration, big data, diversity as a means to faster, better innovation, how new and old business models are leveraging all of the above with a view to making our world a better place in which to live. Well, I realize that tonight is actually about all of these things, and all of these things are talked about in Robin's book, and that is very, very exciting. Tonight we're tapping into the thoughts of one individual, perhaps there's an irony in there somewhere, on how all of this stuff fits and works together to create a more sustainable, a more efficient, a more cooperative world. I've got about 35 minutes, then I'm going to open it up to you. I'll probably come to you before then. If you've got any questions, burning issues, please put your hand up. Please have a think about how you can make the most of Robin's time with us tonight. You're usually introduced as a transportation entrepreneur, a co-founder and CEO of several companies. Jim mentioned Zipcar, Buzzcar. We've got board member there, designer there, disruptor there, influencer there. It's usually a question I ask right at the end of sessions like this. Is there something that you wish was there but isn't yet?
I'm looking forward to the day when I'm not introduced and not recognized by Zipcar, but I'm recognized by this work, because this work is the thing that I feel like we so need. I need every person to be recognizing it. And I was talking to a friend, and I was telling her that I wanted it to become a bestseller, and I said, but I'm embarrassed to say I wanted it to be a bestseller, because do you know authors make 15%? Like, whatever, 15%. I'm not after the 15%. I'm after addressing climate change and transforming world economies, and I am so impassioned by this. And it turns out that this particular structure I put together, I feel like unlike other conceptions, tells everyone that they have a role to play. Government has a specific place to play. Big business has a specific place to play. Individuals have this place to play. And I think as we've been constructing the future economies, people feel like, yeah, you're cutting me out. Like, I've got nothing to do.
You say you want to, let's leave Zipcar off, and you want to be remembered for this stuff. And you talk quite specifically, and you talked a few times about it, climate change. And how passionate you feel about that. Let's start with that then. You talk about how this model can move this, or at least introduce a solution, or move this whole discussion along. And people in this audience would like to know, I'm sure, a little bit more detail on how that would work.
Well, so if we think about climate change, and if I weren't trying to be good and hit my mark of time, and if I had sat there for a minute, I do a lot of traveling. And yes, I have my CO2 airplane miles. But the scale of what has to happen to reduce CO2 emissions in the time required, and the populations worldwide involved, it is unbelievably crushing when you see it in real life. When you see it in city after city after city and country after country, and when you guys go into your stores and you see all this stuff, it is daunting. And turning that ship feels totally implausible. And I look at this construction of excess capacity, platform for participation, and the multiplicity of peers. We know it's going to require many hands to make like work. And we know that none of us are skilled enough. So going to companies. I look at it and I think the role of companies is to make, people ask me very specifically, I think, is there any sector of our economy that isn't saturated in fossil fuel? No, there is none. So there is no sector or no company that can say, I'm exempt from this, or I don't know what to do. I think how are you extracting that out? So I look, for me, in my realms, I think about distributed energy, I think about smart cities, and I think about smart homes. All of those are going to live and die on our ability to have platforms and the peers rotating.
Okay, and let me push that a little bit further. You know, is there another example that you would use that will illustrate how peers and how platforms and how collaboration and open sourcing is going to help solve this problem?
Yes. I have 3 children, and my son is the one who goes to bed the latest every night, and I have said to him every day for 23 years, turn off lights before you go to bed. He has never done it. Never. And I have never taken a shower between midnight and 6 a.m. In my life, I've never taken a shower between midnight and 6 a.m. And my water heater is heated it continues to heat beautifully. I need a platform who looks at my behaviors and says, we're turning that down. Don't ask, Robin, would you like us to analyze your data and turn it down? Yes, because I'm not doing it. I'm not doing the analysis, and I will never do the analysis.
The sense I get from reading the book, especially the pieces on climate change, you are optimistic that this will help. Or, of course, the role of government and the role of big business is important. I think you talk about collaboration with big ink. I think you talked about that in an article. Isn't that the bit you're worried about? That collaboration, making that work. Making government, making big business play a really active role in this quickly.
Yes. So what do I think government needs to do? Government needs to open, we all are living it every day. We need more assets that are opened up so we can move the machine much, much faster. Here is a shocking thing. As I was writing this book, towards the second end, as I watched the trends play out, I became shocked at where the trends were going and what the rational self had to therefore say. So here's my shocking thing that I'd like government, this is for all 3 parties. Since we have to move so quickly, and since regulation and employment and status quo is holding back our ability to evolve that far, so A, because everything that can become a platform is going to become a platform, and because all of our workplace rules and social security benefits have been tied to full-time employment, mirroring industrial capitalism, we are moving today to in the US, 40% of people are freelance, and we're moving to 50% shortly, and all platforms mean everyone is outsourced. So I think we need to have a basic guaranteed income. And I know a lot about transportation. Let me tell you, autonomous vehicles are coming so soon to a city near you, and that's going to take out 25% of employment in 5 years. Done. So we need to have a basic guaranteed income. In exchange for a basic guaranteed income, I would like to tell companies, imagine and consider that every single person that works for you is temporary, is outsourced. Everyone is at will, completely, 100%. And they can fire people tomorrow. Why can they fire people tomorrow? Because we have a basic guaranteed income. And I need them to do that because we need Ford and GM and those guys to transform their industries overnight. We need utility plants to transform overnight. We need businesses and everyone to transform, and everyone is clinging onto their old, ways.
We'll come on to how big business, and as Jim said, a number of people in this, a number of people in this room are part of the bigger, I guess, whether we want to call it old business or big business, or the behemoths of business. So I'll be interested to get your views in just a moment on what sort of collaboration we can see and how these businesses can shift. But back to this idea, just this premise, the sharing economy, or collaborative economy, as you like to call it. Has society, do you think, become more inclined to share things, or was there always this latent desire to share, and it became real with platforms? And I asked the question because in your book, you talked about your idea of when you set up Zipcare, and then the VCs or the investors saying, actually, the American psyche is to own a car.
Right. So if we think about when I launched Zipcar, the thesis was that people were happy to have access to a car and not own it. And everyone in the US, VCs would say, America, our ego is tied up with our car, it's a status, we have to own it. And I have to tell you with amusement that Zipcar was, the idea for car sharing came from Europe and Switzerland and Germany. And 4 years ago, I was back in Paris and I was launching a peer-to-peer car sharing company. And people would say to me, no, Rob, you don't understand. In France, we have our own special relationship with cars. And we're not like you Americans who can share cars. We have, and I think everyone's thinking that they have their own special relationship with their assets. So fundamentally, what we know, and I believe, is that people actually, the economics and the convenience matter way more. And if they can save 3,000 euros a year by just paying as they go, they'll do that. So it's not that they need to own it, it's that they need to have the benefits of that asset. So the second piece was that that you could never, it would be way too complicated, that it was too, the whole system would crumble because you couldn't do this by the hour. That was a business model that just could not succeed. And technology made that happen. And the third was that you can't trust people, and which was your question. The piece around trusting, so you guys, I don't know you. I don't know you at all. And we can know that if I said at the end of this, is anyone going to the other side of London and could they share a cab with me? Everyone here would say, sure, let's go. But actually, in my heart, I'm an axe murderer. And you would have, you make these assumptions all the time around trust. And we don't realize that we do it all the time. I mean, everyone is inviting their children's friends over to the house, or they're sharing dinners with people, or that we do it all the time. And what's happened is now we're able to do that with strangers because of ratings and commentaries. And so ratings and comments, we naturally share, we naturally are quite outgoing, and now we can do it with a much larger circle because of the ratings and commentaries.
Why is that? Why is this business model better for society, do you think? It's a big question, but why is it better for society? Does it make society more resilient? What is it about these business models?
I guess I want to separate that into two ways. I think it's better for a physical, it's better from a physical standpoint because we use fewer resources. And when you share things, there's much more redundancy. So we used to think of cars as being scarce, that I couldn't ever share my car because I needed it to be there when I owned it. But when we pool cars, now they are no longer scarce, right? So we have pooled assets. I think we can apply that to all kinds of assets. But a further piece, as I was constructing this book and thinking about it, which is why I'm moving from the sharing economy to the collaborative economy, it's much larger than just physical assets. It's minds, processes, time of day, data. I mean, it's networks, all of these things, and that there's a fundamental value that is true for big business and for individuals. For big business, you get more innovation, you get more, you learn faster, you grow faster, and you innovate faster when you have these shared open assets. So it's fundamentally, and there's more resilience.
Do you think the guys at Uber and Airbnb are driven by a desire to make a better world?
No, they're driven by desire to make money.
To make money. So it's the unicorns.
These companies learn fastest. You can't beat them because we looked at those curves. They are using assets way more efficiently. They get those iterations of learning way more, and they get this co-investment, this hyper-local co-investment.
Why did you do it? Did you do it to make money, or did you do it to help the environment, or did you do it because you like the idea of sharing? Why did you do it? I did it
for Zipcar. I did it because I personally wanted that service. But the reason, so I wanted that service, but the reason I decided to found it is because A, I knew it was going to be successful, but B, I never spend my time on anything that has no social value. Okay. So it had to have a social value. Okay. But it was going to win.
What worries you about the collaborative economy, about the sharing economy? I mean, there have been pieces, the Ubers, the Airbnbs becoming monopolies, controlling everything, full circle.
So what deeply worries me is I definitely believe that everything that can become a platform is going to become one because of the reasons we've talked about. But that leaves labor unprotected because all of our rules and the way we've organized things is around full-time employment, and we are pushing people now into an opt-in and lots more flexibility. So people are very interested. I was writing an op-ed that I haven't put together. If we think about Uber and the big giant fight, there's many fights within Uber, but one fight is there's a whole bunch of people who like to be Uber drivers. And why do they want to be Uber drivers? Because they are complete control of their own time. And I want to say they have economic agency. I don't have to wait for the man to hire me. I can decide myself how much money I want to make, and I can go do it. They love that. The flip side is, did anyone read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, which I love? The flip side is we actually happen to be humans, and we never do the math. And the math means, and I talk to Uber drivers all the time, have you thought about vacations, weekends, sick days? Have you thought about retirement? Have you actually fit in the cost of your depreciation on your car? Have you actually looked at the insurance details? No, 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 and no. So they're thinking that they're making $15 an hour, when in fact they're making $7. So there's the huge crisis.
And certain parts of this have been picked up by some of the politicians. Hillary Clinton's talked about some of these worries conspiring against sustainable wage growth because there are no benefits and the security, et cetera, et cetera. How do we solve that? Do we solve that? Or does that just rumble on there?
Well, so one of the pieces, and I feel like right now I am sometimes a lightning rod for social entrepreneurs and NGOs who want to yell at me that I'm perpetuating this terrible thing. And I want to say, it doesn't matter what I say, this is happening, A. And B, if we look at income inequality, it is, let me give you a statistic from the US that I'm so shocked about. So how big is the sharing economy relative to the whole economy? This big, like compared to the whole thing? An economist named Pavlina Cherneva had this incredible, she picked up on Piketty's work. So in the US, she looked at, during periods of economic expansion, who gets the benefits of that expansion. So I'll give you 2 data points. Post-World War II, 1949 to 1953, the top 10% took 20% of the post-World War II economic expansion. Seems fine. Post-2008, so 2009 to 2012, huge economic expansion. The top 10% in the US took 116% of the gain. The bottom 90% fell back 16%. But more outstandingly, the top 1% took 95% of the gain. So we are seeing today this income inequality, this spreading of productivity and wages for the last 40 years, and it is getting deeper and deeper. And it has nothing to do with the platform economy. And we're loading on top of that this platform piece and the pace of automation that is making us learn faster.
We'll come back to the sharing economy and how big business fits in, as I said. Just a little bit more on you and the personal side. When I read the book, there was one part of the book when you said, you see excess capacity everywhere. You must have spent years spotting excess capacity everywhere. I mean, was there any point where this was beginning to drive you a little bit crazy?
It did, and it would drive my husband crazy. Because I would say something, I'd say, whoa, did you see that? And he'd say, shut up.
But you must still be doing it, right? You must still be doing it.
I do still do it. It is really, so there's 2 parts to the excess capacity game, and I urge you all with great pleasure. It's a really fun game. But there's 2 types of excess capacity in your mind. There's 2 types.
Sounds a little obsessive, that, I've got to say.
There's 2 types. I tell you, once you see it, it's really hard to unsee. That's what I say. Once you see it, it's hard to unsee.
Right.
And so there's excess capacity that is like mild. So I was in San Jose, California on Monday doing a workshop, and we broke into groups, and one group decided that they wanted to do takeout sharing because they thought that servings were too large and that they wanted everyone to be able to go halvesies on the thing. And I thought, is that really a problem that we need to feel solved? Do we feel like a challenge? So there's a whole bunch of, there's excess capacity that you see that is small potatoes, a very like, who cares, small thing, and then there's other that is like massive.
Do you have to be a little bit obsessive to set up a company like that, like Zipcar?
No.
No?
No. Who didn't want to pay for a car by the hour rather than having to own it, park it, maintain it, snow shovel it, pay the taxes, and whatever? Way better.
A little bit cliched, the question, this next one, but we talk a lot about, in this forum, we talk about failure, we talk to many entrepreneurs about their failures before they made a success. Is that an important part of the process?
If we think about one of the things that this can do is deliver this exponential learning, that's only if you're paying attention. And so there are a whole bunch of platforms that are not looking at what's going on there, and they're not learning from best practices and not saying, wow, that is really going south, I'm going to change that. And I think that if I think about how I've ever succeeded or not succeeded, I succeeded by paying close attention and really trying to learn absolutely as fast as possible. And where I screwed up, I was not giving enough time for the iteration, that I thought, I know about transportation now, I'm really good at this, I'm going to build this whole robust thing out, and then I put it in front of a customer, and I was wrong at 8 out of the 10 things.
So an important part of the process.
It's iteration, absolutely.
Yeah. Jim, in your book, or when he was reviewing your book, or Tim Woods, as you called him in your book in the acknowledgements, I think. Sorry, Jim, to raise that.
And did you not copy, did you not? No.
Said, in the review, he said, a great book for those who like and want change. Now, there are plenty of people who don't like or want change and are threatened by it. How much of a threat are those people, and what happens to those people?
I was just, in the last 2 weeks, I've been on this piece of how can we speed the pace of change and what is holding back this pace of change. And we have to really care about the people who are holding back change. And that's where I have this incredible urgency, because clearly climate doesn't care whether you want it to change, you know, doesn't care what you think, and it's happening at this huge pace. So I'm trying to think of what are the ways I can make people who don't want to change happy to change. And so I'd say that's part of this book, was I tried to paint, and I haven't done a good job here, but around this change way of working, I think there's a lot of ways that is way better than the way we're working now.
Do you think big business has woken up to this idea? How many of your talks are going into big companies, big incumbents, and saying and spreading this message? So
what is so hilarious about this is I spoke to GE's 30 senior most executives, and I also spoke to a group of auto manufacturers, and these are different groups. And when I went onto the stage, I thought, oh, this is going to be so horrible. These people are going to absolutely hate me, and it's going to be just like, it's going to be hell. And then at the end, I say, okay, do you guys feel inspired or terrified? And they're feeling inspired. Because what I think is, in their hearts, they see this happening, and now I'm telling them how to deal with it.
Okay. All right, well, let's take that one step further. You're one of those people in that room listening to Robin Chase. You feel inspired. What do you do about it?
Okay.
You know, what do you speak to management and say, right, we need to sort out some innovation offshoot in our business? How would you do it?
So people in the black, we have 2 slides that I want to add that these are from the book. So if we can go to the slides. So this is a study that someone did, Standard & Poor's 500 index, and you can see a 7-year average of lifespan, how long you're on that index. So in 1960, companies used to be on it for 60 years, and today, here we are in 2015, and you're looking at 15 years. So there should be a lot of urgency around innovating and change and anxiety, just as it is. So here's the next slide. So when I went through and was looking at how people are, legacy and incumbents are doing it, and so here are the ways that when I was trying to pull out what are best practices. So best practices here, you're not going to turn your company around overnight, so start with something small, a pilot that's on the edge, that isn't threatening the center, and try to expand on that. This was a really clever one that I loved, which was, instead of you trying to solve the whole thing, publish your problems. Say, here's our problems, who's got a solution? And so that was ingenious. One is, there's a whole bunch of companies who are facing right now, like I'd say the London cabbie industry, and they could be making the change, but they are saying, no, 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 not me. And so there's a number of examples in the book where companies, it is happening to them, and they are saying, we're cutting that out, we're suing you, you're not allowed to do it, and you're never going to evolve that way. Big companies find it really helpful to imagine their ecosystem as co-creators and as sources of innovation. So just think of the ultimate of legacy incumbents would be the Department of Defense, and why would they ever want to open things up? And so they opened up some data, and then they just let engineers within the Department of Defense do challenges on that. And then after that was successful, I said, well, this is great. They said, okay, just our contractors, people who are already Defense Department contractors are allowed to now use this data. That worked. And then the third year, they said, okay, everybody, our data is open.
Yep.
Innovate on it. So you start with a small, non-frightening piece, and then you prove that it's successful and works, and you go larger.
Okay, because I would imagine, you know, this is something I've asked Thomson Reuters CEO in the past on a stage. Are we innovative enough? You know, can we, as this huge company, you know, 60,000 people, can we be innovative enough? Can we be fast enough? And I'm sure some people in this room are asking themselves the same questions.
And when you say 60,000 people, I think if you said to within the 60,000, you said, okay, we're going to become like Google. Here's our problems. You guys within the company, 60,000 of you, start coming up with solutions. And we're going to put this amount of money into a little pilot. So if you can come up with a great solution, persuade me, do a pilot. Because just even inside, you've got so many
And do you see enough
people.
of that happening?
It's happening increasingly. And I think it's going to happen more.
I don't know if we want to get a really quick show of hands. People who work in
Are you
the sort of companies that we're talking about now, the incumbents. And I know the Unilevers of the world are doing this, because we've talked about it here, who are embarking on little projects, innovative projects like this.
So so the question would be, is your company transforming the way it innovates? Is it asking people either within the company that aren't in the innovation group, or people outside the company to come up with new ideas? Raise your hand. Yeah, I mean, it's starting to eke out that there's more smart people outside than inside.
Of course, another solution's the wrong word, but another way of moving forward is when the Avises buy the zip cars and they incorporate them. And my question to you has to be this: what happens to Zipcar's spirit when it's bought by a big company like Avis?
Went to hell.
It went to hell. See, that would worry a lot of people as well, right?
But don't you think companies can get smarter? I continue. Does that necessarily have to happen? No. And there's some in Silicon Valley. There's a whole bunch of companies that are buying each other, and some not each other. Big ones are buying little ones, and some of those little companies, they are saying, "You guys get to stay outside the company, and you can continue to be out there. We're not going to absorb you into the big mosh pit," which probably means they save less money, but the thing has a higher chance of thriving.
Yeah. What about looking at it from the other side? How do consumers react when their cool company is snapped up by, when Airbnb is snapped up by Intercontinental? How does a cool Airbnb user react to something like that? Is that a danger?
Of course it's a danger, but I don't think it's a de facto. So you're saying we've done things the wrong way, we know we've done them the wrong way, but we can never change. And I think we can. So this, a sort of parallel was, do companies get so big that they can no longer have an intimate, authentic relationship with their customers? And I was thinking about presidential campaigns and Obama's first round. Obama managed to persuade a huge number of millions of people who crowdsourced money that he actually cared about them as individuals, and it was a kind of one-to-one relationship, even though it wasn't. So I think this peer-zinc platforms actually can give the illusion of a huge amount of participation and authenticity. And in a statistical way, if you're paying attention, it does reflect the democratic vision, if not the individual. So the fact that companies have not been able to pull it off for me doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to.
And then the final part I want to mention on this is this idea of seeking out adjacent opportunities. Zipcar and Equity Residential, I think, is an example of that. GM and a real estate company, I think, called Stonehenge. Is that a good solution?
I definitely think it's a good solution. And so that's a good solution. And a solution I would say more overtly is that you guys out there should be thinking to yourself, we're the ink side. We should be doing only what we're doing best and figure out what are the things that are better done locally and start outsourcing those things that are better done locally, specialized and customized, and also thinking, what can we open up that lets people find new value on top of? So they should be thinking of these two things, understanding what you do best and then thinking about your assets. So if I think about those adjacencies are happening because they're saying, wow, we have this member base that loves us, or we have this particular skill and we're trying to spread it. So I look at it and I think, open up these assets. So here's one I've told GE, I don't think they will do. GE's been around forever. They have capitalized on their patents. They should be opening up their patents and saying, hey world, do whatever you want in their patents, and they will not buy the losers, financed by someone else, and every single winner out there, they buy. It's like farming for innovation. So open up these assets, let people play on them, and if you're a big enough company, you buy the ones that win. And
they won't do that, yeah.
And you don't have to ruin them.
They won't do it, but you're still optimistic.